Hi, folks. Welcome back. They did it again. Who's they? Well, the left. Specifically, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the SPLC, is a nonprofit known for tracking and labeling what it considers hate groups and extremist organizations, publishing reports and lists that are widely cited in media and policy discussions. It positions itself as a civil rights watchdog focused on combating discrimination and extremism, which is ironic because yesterday, according to Attorney General Blanche and FBI Director Kash Patel, the SPLC was charged in a grand jury indictment with 11 total counts. They claim that while the SPLC presented itself as fighting white supremacy, it was actually manufacturing the very extremism it purported to expose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred around the country. The charges include 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. This is what Blanche and Patel said in their press conference announcing all of this.
Good afternoon. Today, a few minutes ago, in the Middle District of Alabama, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. According to the charges in the indictment, the SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups. As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. The indictment describes this conduct in detail, but one troubling example is that the SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of 1 person and injured dozens more. This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years.
Wow.
In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the Nationalist Socialist Party of America, Nazis, and the American Front. Now, as the indictment lays out, after SPLC paid members of these extremist groups, it created work product that reported on these activities that the members participated in or contributed to. And to that end, it was doing the exact opposite of what it's told its donors it was doing.
That would be stranger than fiction if it weren't so familiar. We all know that these leftist causes have always been astroturfed, from George Soros to Neville Roy Singham. The left has a vast network of activists who are paid to do on-the-ground disruption of the lives of everyday Americans so they can push their ideological agenda. In this case, it seems they're hitting it from both sides. The figures I just mentioned, that being Soros through Open Society and Indivisible, and Singham through DSA and Code Pink. Now, these guys typically fund left-wing causes and amplify their operations, but here with the SPLC, we see an inversion of that model. The SPLC wasn't just observing extremism, it was allegedly funding these so-called right-wing groups that it was investigating and effectively creating the very stories it would later use to fundraise, justify its existence, and perpetuate more chaos on the American public. Now, needless to say, this sort of fraud, if proven, is absolutely disgusting. It weaponizes our political system and manufactures division in this country, not to solve problems, but to sustain a narrative that benefits the people pushing it solely. So all that being said, think about the implications here. For the past decade, there's been a constant drumbeat in American culture that white Americans, particularly those of European descent, are inherently racist, evil, and irredeemable. Not flawed individuals, not people capable of good or bad, but categorically racist. That narrative didn't just emerge organically, so it seems. It was reinforced relentlessly through media, through academia, through activist organizations that were apparently astroturfing it into relevance. And now we're being told that one of the most prominent organizations behind that narrative may have been artificially inflating the very extremism it claimed to fight. And the most telling part about all of it is the example cited in the indictment, the Unite the Right rally, where payments allegedly were made to individuals connected to that rally, an event that became one of the most politically weaponized moments in modern American history. That rally, folks, was referenced endlessly during political debates, like in the 2020 election by Joe Biden, in 2024 by Kamala Harris. It became shorthand for an entire political argument about the country itself. And now we're learning that according to these charges, individuals tied to that so-called extremist ecosystem may have been financially supported by the very organization claiming to expose and fight them. If that's true, it reframes everything. It suggests not just bias, but fabrication, not just narrative shaping, but narrative creation. And this is where the broader concern truly comes in, because this doesn't actually even exist in a vacuum. As we saw yesterday, as we were going through those FARA filings and foreign influence disclosures, there is a massive interconnected ecosystem of political messaging, influence operations, and narrative control in this country. It's domestic, it's foreign, it's ideological, and it's all layered together. So what we may be looking at here is perhaps just the tip of the iceberg, because it begs the question, how deep does all of this go, considering everything that's been revealed recently? How many of these so-called defining moments we've been told shaped our political reality were amplified, distorted, or perhaps even engineered in order to get us to believe something that wasn't even real in the first place? And how many institutions built their credibility, their funding, and their power on narratives that were never as organic as we were led to believe in the first place?
Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud. This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred.
That level of complexity in the fraud they allegedly perpetuated is actually insane. These people are exactly the evil they claim to be fighting. This appears to be Wolf of Wall Street level fraud, right? Setting up shell companies, rerouting money around the country, manipulating the banking system, all to create a narrative and then sustain it. And by the way, everything they generated had a very real and tangible cultural impact, because for years, pretty much a decade, we witnessed what happened on social media as a result of these narratives aimed at vilifying white European Americans. Events like Charlottesville have been used to justify censorship, surveillance, and sweeping cultural accusations. People's lives were entirely destroyed because of any sort of association to Charlottesville. And now we're being told that that event was basically all curated. Anybody else suspicion that the SPLC may have funded January 6th, or some other organization like the SPLC may have funded it? I wouldn't be too surprised at this point.
I just want to make sure I understand. You're alleging that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the leaders of KKK and other groups to continue their operations? Is that?
I'm not alleging it. The grand jury returned an indictment that says that. And so what the investigation found, according to the indictment that was returned today, is that they were paying. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is raising money, asking folks to give them money to dismantle racism. And over a very long period of time, they were using some of the money they raised from donors to pay to, they call them field, basically to informants, for information, for access, to just pay them for to do certain things. And so, yes, that's exactly what the indictment charges.
Okay, this tells me one of two things. Either people on the left are very easy to bamboozle, or we're just all brain rotted beyond belief to the point where we don't even know what the truth is anymore. Is it truly that easy for a fraudulent organization to mislead the entire American public, our political system, our news media, our culture, to the point of no return on what the true nature of being an American is, of what the true nature of our politics, our culture, of just living in this country is? I mean, can you imagine how these conversations went down between the fundraisers and their marks? I can only imagine an SPLC fundraiser calling someone saying, "Hey, Joe, help us disarm racism." Joe's on the other line saying, yeah, racism's real bad right now. My neighbor has someone just call him the N-word as he was walking down his driveway the other day. The SPLC guy responds saying, "Yeah, Joe, it's real bad. And little does Joe know that the guy who called his neighbor the N-word was tied to the Southern Poverty Law Center. They would probably, imagine them paying field reps to just go individually harass their donors so that they could get more money. I wouldn't put it past this organization. Obviously, I'm being a little facetious here, but you get the point. I mean, if these organizations are so fraudulent to the point that they will deceive the American public to this degree, what would stop them from putting their donors in the same position? Either that or these donors were willfully buying into something that they already knew was a part of the SPLC's proposition, which is using this extremist ecosystem to push this narrative. And they share the mutual interest of having this narrative pushed out there because, you know, at the end of the day, however the left wins, the ends justify the means. Anyway, all that being said, the Department of Justice shared a post on X announcing the indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center, stating that the SPLC allegedly funneled more than $3 million in funds to members of white supremacist and extremist groups. They also included a breakdown showing who was paid and how much. In that breakdown, we see a National Alliance affiliate received more than $1 million, an Aryan Nations affiliate received $300,000, a Unite the Right member received $270,000, a former National Alliance chairman received $140,000, former KKK members received $73,000, and even the American Front president received $19,000. Now, needless to say, if you truly believe these groups are evil and destroying the country, why would you fund them? Obviously, there's another agenda at play here. This all appears to be strategic, aligned with fueling political and partisan divisions that fracture this country from within. Now, it should be noted that the SPLC was led by Richard Cohen. This is Richard Cohen. Now, I'm not making any allegations or speculating about him, but do you think he would be someone interested or aligned with ideas like the so-called Kalergi plan? Now, for those unfamiliar, it's a theory tied to the writings of Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi that some claim influenced ideas around European integration through the European Union, and it's often interpreted by critics as promoting the reshaping of Western European societies through mass migration, open border policies, and the erosion of traditional European heritage and institutions. And when you look at parts of Europe today, where mass migration pressures, cultural tensions, and political backlash dominate society, you can see why people draw parallels to Kalergi's framework. Now, obviously, I'm not claiming that this is what motivated Cohen or what's actually happening here, but it is very interesting how these political tensions are curated in order to create specifically anti-white European sentiment in America, and then further justify the neoliberal open border pro-immigration stance that elevates the immigrant above the American citizen and anybody who's not white effectively above anybody of white European ancestry. Now, with all that in mind, there is a clip circulating showing the SPLC's Mark Potok in an interview, and on his wall, there appears to be a handwritten note tracing the decline of America's white population. So considering everything we've been discussing so far, why do you think this list is up here, folks? Who would specifically benefit from the fracturing of American society and the dissolving of the white European Christian majority this country has enjoyed since its inception? Who benefits the most from undermining Christianity and weakening those traditional institutions? Who benefits from increasing the level of so-called plurality here? Who benefits from dividing our population? Think about that, folks. Why is the white European population in America so specifically targeted? And why would an organization that purports itself to be tracking extremists on one end pay those extremists, those quote-unquote white supremacist extremists, to go out and cause mayhem in the streets, disrupting the lives of everyday Americans, while on the other side keeping track of how much they're succeeding at their goal of reducing the white population in this country? Think about that, folks. Oh, and by the way, I do want to give a special acknowledgement to Alex Jones, who back in 2017 called Charlottesville a false flag run by SPLC operatives. In this article, Alex claimed that the event was staged, alleging the actors were hired to pose as Nazis. He argued that these rallies were advertised as Unite the Right events, and then individuals showing up with torches were later identified, according to him, as actors or Democrat operatives. He also pointed to claims that similar incidents like swastikas being painted or crosses being burned have been staged in the past and later traced back to individuals trying to manufacture this narrative. So just think about that for a second, folks. This is Democrats doing what Democrats have always done. The Democrat Party, funny enough, founded the KKK. They used to go around and actually burn crosses. They literally did the stuff that they're still doing to this day. It's just now it's evolved. It's been reframed, it's been inverted and repurposed so the same kinds of symbols and tactics can be used to push a different narrative and continue advancing an agenda to dismantle this country from within. Think about how unbelievably evil this level of deception is. If even a fraction of this is true, and it's seeming like most of it is, you're talking about manipulating reality itself, subverting this country, affecting the lives of millions of Americans, creating a general sense of distrust and fear in this country by taking events, shaping them, flipping their meaning, and using that to influence public perception and divide people against each other with the sole purpose of achieving, for lack of a better explanation, your communist desires. This sort of practice isn't just dishonest. It cuts at the core of trust. And once that's gone, everything becomes easier to control and weaponize. And again, who benefits from subverting the white European Christian traditions of this country? The institutions that were established and have made this country as great as it is. Who's the greatest benefactor of that dysfunction? Think about that, folks, as we look at yet another photo of an Israeli soldier defacing a statue of Christ. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.